Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Sometimes we take the everyday for granted, and today we're going to deep dive into something you see literally everywhere. I mean, on buildings and in jewelry, tattoos even. But the cross, it's got a history. Way more complicated than you think. And today, we're going to journey all the way from its brutal beginnings as an instrument of execution to, what it represents today, this incredibly pertinent symbol of hope and faith.
It really is a transformation when you think about it, isn't it?
It's huge.
And we're going to be unpacking how that meaning of the cross has, kind of shifted and morphed over centuries, right? We'll look at early Christianity, how it was picked up by the Roman Empire, how it was, really venerated in medieval times, and of course, the different ways we see it interpreted even today.
Perfect. Let's set the scene then. We're talking Roman Empire and crucifixion. I mean, this is a pretty standard way to carry out the death penalty.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did this horrific practice become, the central symbol for a religion about love and redemption? It's kind of a head scratcher.
Well, the Romans, they really knew how to use fear to keep things in check.
Right.
And crucifixion, this was a major part of that. It wasn't just about death. This was a public spectacle. The Romans were really good at inflicting maximum pain and humiliation. They wanted to make it crystal clear that if you messed with Rome, this is what you get. A very gruesome and a very public end.
Gosh, and so how did early Christians, who themselves were being persecuted, how did they take this symbol of terror and, adopt it as their own?
That's a really good question, and I think that is sort of the fascinating paradox at the very heart of the story of the cross, right? For early Christians, the cross represented both Christ's suffering, A and D, and this is key, his ultimate triumph over death. Don't forget, they believed in resurrection. So the cross wasn't just like a symbol of defeat or anything. No, for them, it was a symbol of hope and victory.
So it's almost like they kind of reclaimed the symbol, right?
Yeah.
Taking something that was meant to scare people and turning it into a powerful symbol of their faith.
Exactly. It was a bold move.
Oh, yeah.
And it definitely had its challenges. The Apostle Paul, he even wrote about how the cross was a, quote, stumbling block to some, but the power of God to others.
I bet that was a tough sell, at least initially, with, all the pretty horrific associations.
It really was. And for early Christians, especially when you consider the persecution they were facing, openly displaying the cross, that could be really dangerous.
Yeah, you're putting a target on your back at that point.
Absolutely. That's actually why they used secret symbols, like the fish.
The ichthys.
Yes, the ichthys.
Now, I've heard about that symbol, but why a fish, though? What's the connection there?
So the fish actually had all these layers of meaning packed into it.
Okay.
So for one, it symbolized Christ himself, right?
Yeah.
He was often called the fisher of men. But there's more to it. The Greek word for fish, which is ichthys, it actually forms an acrostic. Yeah, so each letter stands for a word in this phrase, basically declaring faith in Christ. It was their way of, quietly communicating their beliefs without attracting unwanted attention.
I see. So almost like a secret handshake.
Yeah, like a secret handshake.
A way of recognizing each other, fellow believers, when everything around them is, hostile. It's just wild to think about them having to, whisper their faith in the shadows like that. So when did the cross become, safe to display openly?
Well, a lot of historians will point to Emperor Constantine and his, dramatic conversion in the 4th century. As the story goes, he's on the eve of a super important battle and has this vision. He sees a cross right up in the sky, and with it, the words, "In this sign, conquer."
Wow.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. He took it as a sign from God, of course, and, his victory led him to embrace Christianity.
So in a sense, Constantine's personal experience flipped the script on the cross. It went from symbol of shame and punishment to one of victory, divine favor even. That's quite a turnaround.
Oh, it was huge, monumental, really. Constantine's conversion and his, decision to make Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire, that had a profound impact on how people saw the cross. Imagine, for those early Christians who'd faced so much persecution for their beliefs, suddenly the cross is a symbol of imperial power, of acceptance.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
So the cross had its own resurrection of sorts, right? Coming out of those shadows to become this symbol of power and authority.
Yeah, and that newfound prominence really carried through to the medieval period, where the cross, it really took center stage. Think about those soaring cathedrals all decked out with crosses and the elaborate crucifixes. And then, of course, there's the deep devotion that relics inspired, like, fragments of what they called the true cross.
Ah, yes, the true cross. And this is where the idea of relics, specifically like pieces of the actual cross Christ was crucified on, becomes super important, right?
Oh, absolutely. People believed these relics, they held this like spiritual power, and they would go on these massive pilgrimages to see them, to like venerate them. The cross, it became a tangible link to Christ's sacrifice, a focal point for prayer and contemplation.
It's amazing, isn't it, how a physical object can just become, well, so filled with meaning. But, the story of the cross doesn't stop there. Things are about to get really interesting because we're moving into a period of immense change and upheaval in the Christian world, the Reformation. And as you can imagine, the symbolism of the cross, that definitely got caught up in all the debate.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've got this symbol, right? This instrument of terror that morphed into a symbol of imperial power and then becomes this deeply venerated object of faith. And then we hit the Reformation. Things get shaken up big time. So how did all that impact, the way people thought about and looked at the cross?
Well, the Reformation, it was a period where a lot of things about the church were questioned, reevaluated. And that included, its use of imagery, symbols, all of that. And no surprise, the cross became a big point of debate.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You've got this symbol, arguably the most potent symbol in Christianity.
Yeah.
But even it gets caught up in this wave of scrutiny and reexamination.
Absolutely.
So what were the main points of contention? What are people really disagreeing about?
Well, you had some reformers, most notably Martin Luther, who saw the cross as, well, essential. For him, it was this crucial symbol of Christ's sacrifice and God's grace. Focusing on the cross for Luther was key to understanding the very core of Christianity.
Okay, so for Luther, the cross remained incredibly powerful, really necessary. But I understand some other reformers had a different take on it.
They did, yeah. Some, especially those in the more radical parts of the movement, they felt the cross, or at least the way it was being used, had become a problem. You had these elaborate crucifixes,
Right.
The veneration of relics. For them, it was all a bit of a distraction from the true essence of faith.
So they weren't like anti-cross.
Right, exactly. They advocated for like simpler depictions. They wanted to focus more on Christ's resurrection and victory over death rather than his suffering.
So it was about a shift in emphasis then.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Moving away from what they saw as maybe the more visual, even theatrical aspects of how the cross was presented.
Exactly. They wanted to strip away anything that they felt was like unnecessary ornamentation, and just get back to that core message of the gospel. For them, the cross was this reminder of Christ's triumph over death, a symbol of hope, new beginnings.
I see. So it's almost like they felt the symbol had, in a way, become too powerful,
Yeah.
overshadowing the message it was supposed to convey.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful point. They definitely felt the emphasis on suffering, sacrifice, while important, needed to be balanced with this message of hope and resurrection, right? That was really central to their understanding of the Christian faith.
Yeah, and it's a good reminder, isn't it, that even within a single religion, even within Christianity, interpretations of something, even a symbol as powerful as the cross, they can vary wildly.
Oh, absolutely. And those differences, well, they can lead to some pretty passionate debate, even division.
Definitely. And that diversity of interpretation, it doesn't stop there. It's still going on. The cross has taken on so many different forms, meanings across cultures, artistic traditions. Think about the Celtic cross with all that intricate knot work, or the Ethiopian cross and those really distinctive designs. And there are countless other variations.
Fabulous, yeah.
And then there's the way we see it used today, right? In art, music, fashion.
Yeah.
It feels like it's constantly being reinterpreted, recontextualized.
It is, yeah. And I think that's part of what makes it so enduring. It's not this static thing. It's a symbol that evolves and adapts, taking on new layers of meaning depending on the context, the individual even.
Right. But let's face it, the cross isn't always used in positive ways either.
No, it's not.
Sometimes it can be a symbol of division, oppression even.
Unfortunately, that's true. We've seen it throughout history, really. The cross appropriated, misused, often to justify, violence and intolerance.
All right.
From the Crusades right up to, more recent instances of nationalism, even, hate groups. The cross, like any powerful symbol, It can be twisted, distorted, to serve agendas that are just, well, miles away from that original meaning.
Yeah, it's a sobering reminder, I think. Even symbols that are meant to represent hope and faith, they can be manipulated, used to promote division, even hate. Makes you really think twice about how we engage with these symbols.
Right. Definitely.
And the responsibility we have to really understand their history, all the complexities.
Yeah, that awareness is crucial. Recognizing that symbols, well, they can be both powerful and really dangerous, and we have to engage with them critically.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the cross, what's the key takeaway you'd want to leave our listeners with? When they see a cross, whether it's on a church, a necklace, a tattoo, what should they be thinking about?
I think it's an invitation
Yeah.
to pause, to reflect, to consider what the cross means to them personally, but also to, acknowledge its history, all of it. It's complex, it's often challenging, but it's important. And it's a reminder that even the symbols that seem simple, they can hold all these layers of meaning interpretation.
So it's not just about seeing the cross, it's about seeing through it,
Exactly.
understanding that depth,
Yeah.
all the nuances.
Yeah. And maybe that's the most powerful lesson the cross has to teach us, to look beyond the surface,
Yeah.
to question our assumptions, and to embrace the complexities of faith and history.
That's a pretty profound takeaway. Yeah, from a symbol that's been with us, for thousands of years, it just goes to show that, maybe the most powerful symbols are those that keep challenging us, keep inspiring us, even as their meanings, shift and evolve over time. And speaking of evolution, let's shift our focus for a moment. Think about you, the listener. We've been exploring this journey of the cross, right? How its meanings changed over centuries. But what about the symbols that have deep meaning for you in your own life? We've been talking about this, this really big historical symbol, the cross. But I want to shift gears for a minute. Think about your life. What are those objects, those images that, I don't know, have a special meaning for you? The kind of thing, when you see it, boom, triggers a memory, a feeling, a whole bunch of associations.
It's really interesting when you think about it that way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we each have this personal museum of meaning. And just like with the cross, the symbols that matter to us, well, they often tell a story, not just about who we are now, but about, well, how we got here. It's true. Like, we all carry around these little symbolic touchstones, and they're changing, evolving right along with us. Maybe it's, I don't know, a childhood toy that brings back pure joy, or a piece of jewelry from someone you loved who's gone. And that carries, well, a lot of weight, love and loss.
And what's really fascinating is those meanings can shift
Yeah.
over time in ways we may not even realize. That toy might become this bittersweet reminder of, I don't know, innocence lost.
Yeah.
And that piece of jewelry, maybe it goes from being a source of grief to, well, a symbol of resilience,
Yeah.
of cherished memories.
That is so true. I have this seashell.
Uh-huh.
I picked it up on a family vacation years ago. And back then it was just this pretty thing, a souvenir. But now, I don't know, it brings back the feeling of that time, the warmth, the laughter. I can almost smell the ocean.
Yes.
It's like I'm holding a piece of that memory. That's it. That's the power of symbols. It's not about, I don't know, some fixed definition. It's about how they connect to our experiences, our own experiences, and how, well, those meanings can change as we do.
It's like with the cross, right?
Yeah.
We've seen how its meaning has been transformed over centuries. It's reflected the changing beliefs and values of, well, all the people who embraced it and the symbols that we hold dear.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They're constantly being rewritten by our own stories, our own personal narratives.
So I guess as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd really encourage everyone listening to, I don't know, take a little time to explore their own symbolic landscape. Look around your home, think about the things you cherish, those images that, I don't know, they just move you. And ask yourself, what stories do they tell? How have their meanings changed over time? I bet you'll be surprised by what you discover.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this journey, this exploration into the world of the cross. It's been a good reminder, hasn't it?
It has.
That symbols, they're so much more than just images or objects, They're vessels of meaning. They can carry so much weight, inspire devotion, spark debate, even fuel conflict.
And the conversation, it doesn't end here. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep discovering all those layers of meaning that are all around us, in those grand symbols of history, but also in those quiet, personal ones that shape our own individual journeys.
That's it for this deep dive.
See you next time.
Until then,
Yeah.
keep diving deep.